Welcome back to the Nerd Nest podcast. We've got the full crew here again. It's been a few weeks since we had 4 people actually on the show. So it's nice to see everybody again. And I want to start us off today, by talking about these rumors about Microsoft bringing other stores onto Xbox. And the idea, and Rich kind of brought this up in our little Discord, but the idea being that could Microsoft beat Valve to getting a set-top box PC that is like simple, that you can just plug into your TV and not really have to think about it. That's the thing that since the Steam Deck came out, I know that myself, I've been looking for that. I've been hoping that Valve would release those things. Could Microsoft beat them to the punch? Rich, you kind of brought this up and start us off with this topic. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so Tom Warren wrote this editorial on The Verge that he says the future of Xbox looks a lot like PC. And he put together a lot of breadcrumbs, right, that Microsoft has been dropping, not just recently, but he went back and found some other breadcrumbs that are really convincing. And at this point, I think it's almost a foregone conclusion that he's right. The future of Xbox does look a lot like PC. So with regard to the store thing, we have that interview from Phil Spencer just, a couple months ago, where Polygon interviewed him and Polygon asked him, do you think you'll see Epic Game Store and Itch.io on the Xbox in the future? And he says, yes. But you could be convinced that that's just like him posturing, him talking, but like Tom Warren found a link from back in 2021, where the the president of Microsoft, whatever that position was, and I forget his name, but he published basically a blog post that talks about the future of Microsoft app stores. And when it comes to Windows, he says something that's sort of inconsequential, right? He says that we're going to continue operating the way we've been, which is that you can still, even though we have the App Store, you can still download things from the internet and download things from other stores. But the thing that's sort of not a gotcha, but very interesting about that post from 2021 is that later on in that post, he says, and as far as the gaming app stores, like Xbox app stores, they'll be taking all of these same principles and following them in the next generation. So he pretty much just straight up says, you will be able to either sideload games from the internet on the next generation Xbox, or you will be able to install stores that will allow you to install games. And they're doing all of that to sort of be ahead of regulation, right? So they made no bones about it. They are going to do that in the next generation.
Right. So we're going to see, the Epic Games Store, possibly Steam, possibly Itch.io, possibly, what's GMG?
GOG.
GOG. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. GOG. All of these different stores available as a different way to buy your games for the Xbox. So essentially that turns the Xbox into a PC. And we talked about that before, but then you said, well, okay, it's funny. I saw this, somebody tweeted, the Xbox is a console, the Xbox is a PC, Xbox is cloud, Xbox is, and they just listed all of these things. And yeah. That's exactly what it is. Xbox is a PC. It just doesn't. It's a closed system that it looks like they're opening up, and I think that that's super interesting. But then you said, well, what about like backwards compatibility,
right,
on PC? And I was like, well, backward. I mean, the PC is already backwards compatible. And then you said
that they would be looking to bring backwards compatibility of Xbox console games to the PC. And in fact, Phil Spencer has also spoken about that. So this was about another 2-3 years ago, where Phil Spencer was interviewed, I want to say by PC World. I'll give you links so that you can leave them in the description. But Phil Spencer was asked about whether or not we would see OG Xbox emulation, Xbox 360 emulation on the PC. And he doesn't confirm it, but he says we are thinking about it. Like that is, we are thinking about that in our future. He describes OG Xbox emulation as easier because it's an x86 chip. But the problem with 360 is that it's a PowerPC chip. And, you know, currently they are doing PowerPC to x86 emulation, but it's a fixed spec with Xbox One, Xbox Series. So they can do it for that fixed spec, but PC would be a lot more difficult. But he was clearly thinking about it. I have the quote here. So he says, I want people to be able to play games. Emulation is hard. Xbox 360 specifically is a PowerPC chip emulated to x86, which is difficult. It's a little bit easier when you have a fixed spec. And then later on he says, OG Xbox is a little bit easier because that was an x86 chip it was running on. Obviously, when we think about UWP and the ability for games to run across console and PC, we're getting closer. And then finally he closes. So I think we've got work to do there, but I think it's in our future.
What do you think about that, Russ? I mean, you emulate Xbox 360 games all the time. Yeah. It's not that hard these days. It's harder on lower spec hardware, I'm sure. But like, do you see this happening as official backwards compatibility through emulation?
I mean, PCs today are only going to get more powerful, and the Xbox 360 is still going to be that same spec, and so it will get easier over time. And I like the idea, you know, of, I don't know, it's weird. Xbox 360 is a weird middle ground to try to like focus on emulation because half of my catalog, you know, that I have historically is digital purchases, and then the other half are like my discs. Like I got a big disc library of Xbox 360. I think that was like the last one where we all were still buying discs of it, just collectively. And so I don't know, how are they going to make it so? I want to play Halo 3. That'd be awesome. You know, how am I going to play Halo 3? I have it on a disc. How am I going to play it on my PC? Do I have to buy it again? You know, like, so those are the kind of things that we'll have to kind of think about. The thing that really interests me, Rich, in your quote was the UWP like aspect, like just mentioning that, because I keep thinking about this. You know, I knew this was going to be our topic, but I keep thinking about the Steam Deck experience where you have a console and then you boot into Linux, and most people don't want to do that, but you have the option. It's like, hey, yes, you can use it as a desktop too. It's a PC and all those kind of things. We usually will just go in there, do whatever we need to so that we can get back to the console experience. And some of that includes using a package wrapper to be able to get things like Epic Game Store or Heroic Game Launcher, all that kind of stuff running, right? So what if the next Xbox has the same kind of dual boot mindset where it's a Windows PC, you can boot into Windows, and they'll have UWPs or other packages that will then be able to implement it in the console side. So you will, yes, maybe not officially, they will have Steam support because maybe Steam's like, no, we're not going to let you do that. But what if there is some sort of unofficial, you know, like Heroic Games Launcher kind of thing that allows you to then boot Steam into your Xbox over a layer or whatever that's going to be technically. I don't know what it's going to be, but that's the way I was thinking about it. It's like, sure, maybe Microsoft wants to do this, but maybe Valve doesn't. And so there may be an unofficial way to add that as well. So it's like another layer where I find this next Xbox to be like, man, I hope they give us that freedom. That'd be awesome.
Cary, would you prefer that they just... I don't know about you, but for me, I don't want the UWP apps. I just want them to run just regular ass Windows games and stop trying to shoehorn in their own store. I totally get why they would do that, why they stick with their own store. Do you see any future where they just say, yeah, you know what, making our own store is too much of a pain in the ass. Let's not force the devs to support the UWP stuff.
I don't know. I don't see them doing that because I don't want to say this like as a negative for Microsoft. It's really one of Microsoft's positives is that when they develop something, it has legs and it's going to have legacy. So for them to just say, hey, you know what? It's not like a Google thing. It's like, you know, Google Keep, everyone uses that. Let's name that Google Tasks now, and maybe it'll be something different. And, you know, like there's the whole Google graveyard of things of like, whenever Google makes something, you have zero idea if that's going to hang around. Whereas with Microsoft, as much as UWP and UWA no one really likes,
they'll rename it a million times, right? Microsoft will rename whatever they're doing a million times, but they will stick with it.
Yeah, the core idea of it from a developer's point of view, nothing is really changing, right? All the things that are there might be some extensions to it, there might be new things, but really, when you think about it, the legacy legs of it is going to be long. So
Mhm.
I don't see them doing that. Specifically, it does suck. The Xbox app is just a front end for the Windows Store. Like if
Right.
you go and just like download anything in the Xbox app and then just open up the Microsoft Store, you'll see it downloading in the Microsoft Store. And it's like, oh, this is crap.
Right.
Like no one likes to deal with it, and it causes more problems than it solves. Mostly, I want to kind of backtrack there. When you have enthusiast PC people, and a lot of PC gamers are going to be very enthusiast, they're going to do a bunch of things that disable telemetry, disable a firewall, disable this, disable that. And as a result, Xbox app will just crash and fall flat on its face with zero error given to the user because it's a front end to
Right.
Windows Store. So anything that happens never really gets passed on to the user. So there's like lots of things that just seem weird. Yeah, so when it comes to that, I think that they really should really embrace their W32 legacy, which is what everyone loves and what Steam still uses, like, you know, and GOG. Yeah, I don't I don't know. Speaking of the 360 emulation on PC, I had brought this up like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, on Meta Council, the private forum for Steam users.
Mhm.
And I was like, they're going to bring it. I was like, I will bet anyone my handle. And someone, that's why my handle on there is Nostradamus on there, because I obviously didn't get that one right. But I've always felt that they should do it because the Xbox One is a piece of crap. Like, it's a legitimate garbage heap. It's running AMD Jaguar cores like the PS4 is, but the Xbox One is specifically even worse than the PS4. And they managed to get good working Xbox 360 emulation on effectively AMD's garbage Atom cores, which is a Herculean effort. So if Microsoft can make that run on dog water, certainly they should be able to make it run on other people's PCs relatively easier.
sure.
Now, obviously, that makes things a little bit harder and stuff, but as we are getting further and further along, and with all the new extensions that are coming on CPUs and stuff, especially just having a decent CPU, like, you can just like be relatively confident that most of the PCs that are out there would be able to handle 360 emulation as designed by Microsoft. So I still feel confident in that. This whole thing is like a real dark horse to me. Like, it's like the console space is all kinds of wacky, and everything's crazy, dude.
So here's my bet, right? And then I'll give you a little bit of background because I'm doing a video on this, right? My bet is that both Xbox and PC are changing, right? So like,
Yeah.
on the Steam Deck side, and it's not just Steam Deck, right? Like, what Valve has always been about is, in terms of Steam, is trying to take the niceties of console gaming while keeping the freedom of PC gaming and bringing a more streamlined user experience. The Steam Deck is just like exponential in that regard, right? In how it approaches that. But like, just Steam in general is just trying to take the convenience of console gaming and bring it to the freedom of PC gaming. So I think that Microsoft's thinking the same thing both ways. So I think they want to make the Xbox more like PC, make the PC more like Xbox, and in the next generation, they'll be essentially the same thing. So maybe you buy an ROG Ally, it boots into Xbox mode, but you can go into desktop mode. Maybe you do a UWP wrapper, maybe you just sideload, I don't know, and then you shoehorn things into the Xbox app, you load the Xbox app, and then you're playing Steam games from your Xbox app. And I think same on the Xbox. You boot into Xbox, and then you can, opt into the desktop mode or whatever, sideload things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm picturing.
So I don't see that happening, and the only reason I don't see that happening is because we already have that whole devs don't like Series S mantra that's going out there. And if any PC could
Do you buy that?
I think that there are a few that complain about it, but when it's just two specs, I don't think it's that big of a deal when it comes down to it, because it's not like it's that much harder. But if you could, if you are suddenly saying to game devs, say, hey, Xboxes are about to be super varied, and all of the stuff that you like, where does Xbox's certification process get into this? where it was previously. It's going to be super, super muddy if they could just elevate any particular spec, unless it's like very concrete of like only these things can run Xbox OS. That's still a hard problem. I think that it's more likely that you're going to have the Xbox hardware that could bubble itself into a Windows space and then just like install stuff. So you're like in a VM that has all the extensions of all whatever the hardware is capable of. It's going to present itself as a Windows thing. It's a hard thing. I don't see them being able to do it, because it's kind of like what you're saying is, and I can kind of agree with you, is if Steam Deck and SteamOS is using Vulkan, Proton, and that whole compatibility layer to take PC gaming, they're saying, hey guys, we realized that when SteamOS came out, when we were thinking of people making Linux builds, no one's going to do that. No one's going to do that. You need to make the build that you're going to make for PC, and we'll worry about the translation layer. And I think Microsoft is going to have to do the same thing on the PC side. Is you make a PC game, and we'll make sure that it can run on our Xbox hardware, rather than the other way around of every PC is now an Xbox, and just like that's
right.
I don't see that happening. I see them taking a Steam approach like that, but who knows? I mean, everything is like topsy-turvy over here. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm talking to a bunch of people, and everyone's like, guns akimbo on like, what they think's going to happen. And it's really hard to say.
But at the same time, every PC is an Xbox right now. Like, you have the Xbox app, you have access to the Xbox store, and I can run pretty much. Look, I haven't like looked real hard to see if I'm right about this, but I can't think of, there's very few games that I can get on my Xbox that I can't get on the Xbox store. You know what I mean? Like the number of games that are in that,
it's not a big number actually, though.
Like the Venn diagram where it's not overlapping.
Yeah, they call those Play Anywhere games.
They're like,
I was going to say, they have the Play Anywhere games, right? And that's just a list of games that will, if you buy it on Xbox, you can also play it on your PC, and like cross saves and all that kind of stuff. The list is not huge. I'm trying to pull it up right now, the actual number. It's not huge, but I agree with you that yes, nowadays with the new releases, you can probably get them on both platforms. Whether or not it's going to be Play Anywhere or whatever will be a different story, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and then I think what's much more likely is, instead of the idea of every Xbox becoming every PC becoming an Xbox, is that every Xbox is going to become a PC with these other stores.
Yes.
And that gives them the low friction console like experience that people have been looking for since we got our hands on the Steam Deck.
Right.
We don't have that console-like experience outside of consoles. In fact, in the Verge article that I had up earlier, there's a quote that says, the Steam Deck may have only sold a few million units so far, but it represents the biggest threat to Xbox consoles and Windows-based PC gaming ever. Valve has managed to create a console-like experience for PC games, and it has access to all of the best Xbox and PlayStation exclusive games through the Steam store. Like, all of these things that they're saying, it makes it okay. So as soon as Valve releases a box with SteamOS and I hook it up to my TV, I'm all done. I don't have to worry about anything else. But if Microsoft could get the other stores on the Xbox first, maybe I won't bother, because I already have an Xbox. And if I have access to Steam on there, then I don't need to buy Valve's little box, because I can play all those same games on my big screen.
Right. Yeah. It's like the way of thinking
so here's the only hard part. Go ahead.
No, it was just one line, and that was just that, it's the way of thinking of, okay, I've got an Xbox, and now it can play thousands and thousands of more games, as opposed to like a Steam box where you're like, okay, what can I play? You know what I mean? Like, it's a different way of thinking, where the Xbox is being blown wide open, as opposed to PCs, which we all know are going to be able to do that anyway. And so it's a bigger step for Xbox than it is for Steam. That's the way I see it. Anyway, Cary.
Yeah, so the thing that I was going to say is that the only problem here, the only fly in the ointment, is that if an Xbox can play any PC game, Microsoft is now beholden to at least have a somewhat up-to-date driver that would be...
It's not necessarily every PC game, right? But I think your point is still...
Right. Yeah. So if it's on GOG, if it's on Epic Game Store, if it's on Steam, wherever it is, itch.io, wherever you're getting it from, right? There is some aspect to that where you are going to need the latest driver that's there, okay? Because what's available on Xbox is not necessarily one-to-one for PC. And there's also, at least as far as Steam is concerned, because of their barely existent certification process, is that rapid releases happen on PC as opposed to happening on console. So you'll see like FSR whatever come to PC way before it comes to a console release. But then there's going to be things that are going to be needed on the driver side to enable that. So that's a thing that Microsoft's going to have to tackle. So there's two things that they tackle, right? They have to have a PC driver that can play PC games. And then they have to have some type of wrapper or front end that makes all of that Windows bogus stuff go away. Like, you need to get a list of games that are on your account for GOG or whatever, and you click install, and it hides all that crap for you. Because if they show the Windows desktop on that thing, just throw it away. Just like you guys,
right.
You guys lost it. I don't know where you guys missed the assignment, but somewhere along the way, you guys lost it.
I agree, and if they, well, and you know that also, if they do that, if they find a way to make the every Xbox a PC, then they can just port that exact same UI to Windows and have it be auto set by a manufacturer.
Oh, right.
Oh, I got an ROG Ally. Let's use the Xbox UI thing that they developed for their Xbox consoles that also have access to these other stores, and now you also have your Xbox handheld. But Microsoft doesn't have to put out their own hardware. They can depend on everybody else's hardware.
That I could totally see. That's like a unified effort that I think would pay dividends, is that you have one team working on a Windows app that effectively would be running in the VM shell of Xbox that would be booted up, and that's all you have access to. But on the PC side of things, when you want to load into that, you're loading into effectively the same thing. That's just not in a VM bubble. It's on your own host PC. So
right,
yeah,
and this solves all of those problems all at the same time.
So I had a point about Xbox 360 emulation. We were talking about it earlier, and you know, as we were talking about it, it started getting me thinking, okay, like, sure, not every PC will be able to play every Xbox 360 game, but then I started thinking about the PSP emulator. If you've ever used that and a game starts to bog down, the app actually has like a thing that'll say, hey, you're getting some slowdown. Why don't you think about frame skip or something else? You know what I mean? So what if Microsoft had something like that where they're like, hey, this computer that you're trying to run Xbox 360 on isn't quite up to snuff. You know, maybe think about not using this app, you know, something like that. And that kind of covers it, because if you think about it, like Xbox, like Microsoft sells PC games, and they're not like telling you, well, they do have a little alert and be like, we're not sure if your PC can play this game. But that's the same kind of idea, right? They'll still sell it to you. And the same thing with the Xbox 360 emulation, where it's like this idea of just make it available, and sure, maybe your PC can play it, maybe it can't, but it would still be really cool for Xbox 360 owners to be able to play those games on their PC. So just another win that they could have. It's not a perfect implementation, but it would make a lot of people happy.
So for this emulation, for, you know, Xbox 360 emulation on PC or backwards compatibility on PC, Russ, do you see them making their own emulator, or just using emulators that have already been done that maybe have, you know, free and open source software rules along with them so that they can be used by others?
I think that yeah, there's a couple out there, and I don't think they would use those. I think that theirs is probably a little better. The community ones are just kind of hacked together. Let's see if this works. You know, the same kind of way that most emulation development works. And so I'm assuming that the official one that they use to be able to play Xbox 360 games on an Xbox One or an Xbox Series, I'm assuming that's further along than the community ones. And so I think they would probably stick with their own stuff.
That makes sense. Rich, anything else that you wanted to add to this story?
Yeah, one more thing is that like this is like a common theme on some of my video essays, is that I think like leadership is sometimes underestimated and undervalued. And so it's interesting to look back at like Gabe Newell in 2012 and see how he was reacting to Microsoft Windows 8 and the Windows App Store, right? And when you look back at that time in Microsoft, that's in 2012, the CEO was Steve Ballmer, who seems like a cool dude, but was not a great CEO for Microsoft, right? Like these were the darkest times that Microsoft had. And it was just a year prior to the reveal of the Xbox One. And Don Matrick was, head of Xbox at that time, which also dark time for Xbox. And 2 years later, I think Satya Nadella was the CEO. And 1 year or months after that, he installed Phil Spencer as sort of the head of Xbox or head of Microsoft Gaming. And like things have been very different since then. And as immediately afterwards, they were very open to open source, using open platforms. Like you would know this if you were like a Microsoft Stack developer at the time. And so I just see like they seem to be very into the open platform right now. So one last quote here is Phil says, "Consider our history as the Windows company. No one would blink twice if I said, hey, when you're using a PC, you get to decide the type of experience you have by picking where to buy games. There's real value in that." And so that's the end of the quote. And that reminds me of Gabe Newell in 2012 saying, we have benefited a lot from open platforms. We see value in that, and we want to continue building an open platform.
So, that open platform, let's say that there's two. You got the Steam box that Valve decides to sell with Steam OS installed on it. It's a set-top box. It's basically a Steam Deck with more power, no screen, no battery, and an HDMI port. So you can plug it into your TV. You get that, and you have the other option is the Xbox that is actually a PC that has a wrapper in order to make it so it's console-like and has a good 10-foot interface. If you have to choose between those two, and they can both run all of the same games, which one would you buy, Rich?
Yeah, it's got to be, for me, Steam. Even aside from just the nice like Steam input, Steam cloud saves, Steam is a little bit of a black hole sometimes, right? Like once you're in the Steam ecosystem, it is really, really hard to get out. I don't have as many games as Cary does, but I have a ton of games, and I have more games, like in order of magnitude, more games on Steam than I do on any other platform. So it's Steam for the foreseeable future.
Russ?
If you can get Steam on an Xbox, then I want an Xbox, because I can then play Xbox, but then also if I can just access those games that I already own, it'd be amazing. And I don't think that the Steam box will allow me to play Destiny 2. And so I'm not saying that specifically just for that game, but there's always going to be games like that won't maybe run on Steam. And so I don't know. I feel like the Xbox, if it had the access to Steam library, then yeah, that would be a complete winner for me. I would want that kind of thing under my TV as opposed to trying to fiddle around with a Steam Deck kind of OS on a TV.
Yeah.
Okay. Cary, which one would you pick? An Xbox that could run all the same games, or a Steam box that could run all of the same games?
Probably agree with Russ. I would rather, because that gives me more, right? I get +1 on that, because there's the whole Xbox side of the equation that's still there. And I have a bunch of Xbox games that I don't necessarily own on Steam, because I never bought them on Steam because I already owned them on some other platform. So that's probably where I would be. Yeah, it's such an interesting question to ask, because it's almost unbelievable on the face of it.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it myself, and like I don't buy games on my Xbox ever. I have bought Tekken 8 and the other game that I bought on my Xbox was the oh my god, the sci-fi Star Wars, it's not Star Wars, but it's Mass Effect, the Mass Effect trilogy on Xbox. Every other game that I've played on my Xbox has been from Game Pass.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't have an investment in my Xbox games. Like I just don't have very many Xbox games. And, you know, if I'm looking at, you know, a box that has Steam OS and a box that has the Xbox OS, which is really Windows, my gut tells me I would prefer the Steam one, and that's what I would end up playing the most on, even though it wouldn't have Game Pass. And gotta be honest, Game Pass is awesome, but most of the time I don't play those games. So I think that we're gonna end up this episode with a tie. You know, it's me and Rich saying we want the Steam boxes, and Russ and Cary want the Xboxes. And, you know, I guess you guys who are watching this or listening to this have to break that tie in the comment section down below that like button, because I don't know where to go with this, because it's too many good choices, it seems like.
It's almost too good to be true, I would say. Sorry, cut off again, but I was going to say, it's almost too good to be true. Like, there's no way that an Xbox can also play Steam. Like, it's too much. Game Pass plus Steam on the same thing. It just feels like it's too consumer friendly. That's all I had to say.
So in 2010, this is like the Don Matrick era and Bomber era of when Xbox really started going downhill. There was a palpable lack of any of whatever they were doing. Like 2005, 2006 to 2009 Xbox 360 was banging on all cylinders. And then 2010, you could just feel the Microsoft hubris just bleeding through everything. Like all the things that they were doing were, you know, everything that the Xbox team did to make it where they were. They did an unreal job. And then these like suits come in, just like, oh, look how cool we are. We're the cool kids. We're gonna do all, and just like destroy the brand, right? And then that stupid TV nonsense that some CEOs cooked up with AT&T is like, you know, TV is gonna be big. Everyone's cutting the cord, but TV. It was truly bizarre. And in 2010, when Steam really started pushing their huge sales, I was like, holy moly, I can get the entire IDOS collection of games for $50. Well, all right. And then I just like, that's when I started my journey of like till 10,000 games on Steam.
That's when the Steam sales were insane, right? Yeah. Like they've kind of toned things down in recent years, but back then it was like, holy cow,
outrageous. But I would say that to Gabe Newell's credit, he very much understands that if you try to squeeze something with an iron grip too much, that people won't, they'll just go somewhere else. And to Gabe's credit, you look at Humble Bundle, you look at all the other bundle sites that are out there, Fanatical, being able to buy your Steam games on other platforms that are not Steam, by Valve allowing companies to just generate Steam keys for $0 and then sell those keys somewhere else or put them in bundles, was such a brilliant move by Valve. But I don't know that a lot of companies would have the wherewithal or they wouldn't do it because they'd be so afraid to lose that money. And Valve just did it. And that is also one of Valve's gigantic strengths, is that they just allow that to happen. And it's what makes it's kind of insidious, where you just keep on going into Steam. You're like, no, it's a bundle. Does it have Steam keys? Like if it has a GOG key, like you're like, eh. If it has an Epic Games launch, you're like, eh. If it's a Steam key, you're like, oh yeah, good. I want that, because that's where I am. And it's all of these like removing friction points that Gabe Newell has been doing. Like that is like has been his mission, is all friction must go away.
And the way that he can do that is because they're not publicly traded.
Sure.
Like, because they're not a publicly traded company, he doesn't have stockholders to answer to. So if anybody looks at what Valve does and says, well, I don't like this because of, these reasons, he can say, well, I don't care what you like. I'm doing it my way because I understand that that's the best consumer experience. And if I give the better consumer experience, then I'm going to make more money down the line.
Yeah.
But shareholders, they don't give a shit about that. What they care about is, can I grow the money that I've invested in this stock quickly so I can turn around and sell it and then buy some other stock somewhere else. They don't care about the long-term growth of companies. Because of that, all the other companies that are publicly traded, they are handcuffed by morons who are the ones who are pumping money into the stock market. Not people, like, if you're a person who has stocks, I'm not calling you a moron, but the people who are making those decisions or getting in the way of the right decisions. Russ has his hand up.
Yeah, so I was just going to mention exactly into this point, right? Think about these not CEOs, but just basically shareholders who are thinking along the terms of, like, how can we continue to get an experience that's tolerable while still making as much money as possible? And that's not what Gabe has to think about. Gabe just has to think about the user side. So a good example would be my website. So I got a website, I put all my guides on it and stuff, and there's this, like, temptation to monetize it, put some ads up there, make a little bit of money off that too. But I own that, own my website wholesale and all that stuff. I don't want any ads on any website ever. I hate seeing ads. So what do? I just take them off, and it makes, like, the best user experience ever. I'm not making money off of it, but it's endearing people to my website. Like, people are like, this is a great website. And that's going to be, like, the way that you actually get success, is making people, like, fall in love with the experience, and getting CEOs and shareholders out of it so that they're not thinking about the bottom line is exactly where we need to be. And so, yeah, I do agree with that, and that I think that Gabe's in a better position to just do what's going to be best for the user.
So I'm in total agreement with you guys. When I digress, as I normally do, because the original question is, I started going away from Xbox in 2010, and only in 2019 did I come back to Xbox. And the only reason that I started using Xbox anything at all is because of Game Pass. If Microsoft did not have Game Pass, I don't think I would care about Xbox at all.
Yeah, so I agree. Basically with everything, right? And so, like, that reason for coming back, Cary, I think, again, is a lot of credit to Satya and to Phil, right?
Yeah.
And I say that because, going back to the shareholder discussion, there are actually two ways that you can just, as a company, do whatever you want. One of them is to just be self-owned, right? But the other one is to just be making so much money that the shareholders can't, like, say anything to you. And right now, Microsoft is making a lot of money, thankfully, for them, right? Like, not thankfully for me, but for them. So they have a little bit of, like, leeway to do what they want. And I think just based, and this is giving them a lot of credit, that what they're saying is what they mean, which is, clearly not always the case for suits. So I'm not credit, but benefit of the doubt, that what they say is what they mean. But what they've been saying for, and how they've been acting for the last 5 to 10 years, is that they do value open platforms. They do value openness. I think the downside to that is, they do still have to make money. So they've been relying on things like ads. And clearly Game Pass, I think we all agree, is not going to have the same value 10 years from now that it does today. But I think that because they do, once again, value that open platform, I think they mean it, right? Like, I think that they're really going to dive into this ability to have multiple stores, and I think it benefits everyone, right? So, like, if Steam can get on Xbox, that's going to be huge for Steam, right? Like, we could frame this as, like, will Xbox beat Valve to the punch? But you could also frame this as, now Valve doesn't have to make a piece of hardware to get Steam into living rooms.
Right. And
So-
that would be huge for Valve. I like earlier, I can't remember who said it, but somebody said something along the lines of maybe Valve doesn't let that happen. I cannot see any world in which Valve would say, yeah, don't put our store on your box.
Yeah. I don't see why they would.
I'm in agreement. There's like a few things, like when you talk about the whole thing, when you say, will people not be using Game Pass in 10 years? And for me, I can't help but think that if they're playing the long game, right? If you're trying to say, okay, what are they trying to do? Is Game Pass a platform itself, as opposed to Xbox being the platform? Is Game Pass the platform, much like Roblox and Fortnite are platforms? Because when you go into Fortnite and Roblox, you get a grid-like wall of experiences that you can play. And Game Pass is a wall of a grid-like experience of games that you can play. The only difference is that Game Pass costs money from the get-go, whereas Roblox and Fortnite, you can just waltz in free to play and just start going nuts in there. So for me, there needs to be a free-to-play component to Game Pass somewhere, even if it's just the free-to-play games that they just have in the Game Pass side of things. Or some Microsoft-only stuff like Grounded, Sea of Thieves, something like that, where they can get people to just jump in. But yeah, I mean, we're seeing the shift happen before our eyes, and there is some divide of where that's going. But I can't help but shake the feeling that we are witnessing the old school way of things just eroding before our eyes, and the games that we play are not going extinct, but not the cash cow that they once were, and we're seeing that change.
It's definitely a possibility. All right, let's move on to the next topic, which actually we got. So we still have Delta, the iOS emulation that I want to talk about. We have some ROG Ally news that I want to talk about. I also want to talk about our big argument when it comes to CRT shaders and maybe a game that's going to vanish soon. But before we get to all of that, I want to first wish happy birthday to the Game Boy. It's 35 years old to not today, but like this week. 35 years old. Does anybody have a favorite Game Boy game? Like, what's your favorite Game Boy game? Russ, I'll make you start, even though I didn't warn anybody about this.
It's actually pretty easy for me. So I love Super Mario Land. I think everyone probably, Tetris is an easy choice too. But Super Mario Land for me is amazing because it was the first time you had like handheld Mario. And that was a revelation back in the day. And it's janky, like the enemies are not the same enemies as you get in the NES platform. It's just kind of weird, like the way that the fireball like shoots straight up. Like, yeah, there's some elements to it that are weird, but man, it's just so charming. And so I still love
there are shmup levels.
Right. Yeah, you're in the plane or the submarine.
Yeah. So that's
it's really weird. That's a good game.
All right, what's your pick, Rich?
My actual pick would be Tetris, so that's a little boring. So I'm just gonna say Batman. I spent so much time with Batman on Game Boy as a kid. It's not I wouldn't say it's a good game, but it brings back so many fond memories to fire that up today.
Very cool. What about you, Cary?
So I have a few. One of the ones that I liked, it may seem like a big of an eyeball, but I actually still have it over there. It's Marble Madness, the Game Boy version of Marble Madness. It was a lot of fun. I actually really enjoyed it. However, without a doubt, the one that I was super happy about was Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. It was a bit of a difference. Like when I was looking at the pictures, I was like, finally, like this is like what we were wanting. Like we didn't want Adventures of Link. We wanted this. So I just felt like it was a return to like what made Legend of Zelda good but different. And then when I was playing it, I was like, oh, this is really wonky. But I still really enjoyed it. I played through the whole thing of it, even though it was kind of the Super Mario 2 of Legend of Zelda games. But I still really enjoyed it. And then probably the last one is Pokemon Red, which I really, really enjoyed. And it's the only Pokemon I actually ever played ever.
Wait, nothing after that?
No. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Ditto. Yeah.
I
Same
never,
here.
I never played. The first Pokemon game I ever played was Pokemon X, and I thought it was really good. I liked it a lot, and then I never liked another Pokemon that I played after that. Like they were all disappointing to me because they were it's the same game. I already played this. I don't need to play it again.
That's exactly why I never played another one, because they were coming out with a bunch of them, and I was like, how much different is this than the one that I got? But yeah, it was Red that the one I chose, and I liked it a bunch.
Very cool. For me, it's got to be the easy one, the boring choice. Tetris. Loved Tetris.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved that game.
Soundtrack is
Although once there was an upgraded version of Tetris that had it so that you could save your pieces.
Your piece, yeah.
I could never go back and play the original again. It just didn't. It was like that level of strategy and safety.
Right.
Made it a much better game. But happy birthday to the Game Boy, I guess.
How do we feel about being able to rotate your piece pretty much indefinitely? Where do we land on that?
What do you mean? You mean like when it's landing, you can keep hitting the button and it just spins in place?
Yeah.
I'm pretty big on it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I'm big on it because it's like a safety net, and it has like also maybe it's just like janky controllers that I would have. But you know, when there are those Tetris versions where you press up and it just goes kadoosh right down.
Right.
That's like, oh god, press the button, mesh. I like having, even if it's a half a second of like, are you sure that's what you want it? And if you could just fudge it into space, I really enjoy that. Like forcing a Tetris piece into some place that it's like impossible otherwise. Yeah, I do like it.
Yeah.
So here's another question. What is the bigger upgrade in Tetris? Having the ability to save a piece, or the ability to see the ghost of your piece on the bottom? Like, which of those is more important to you as a player? Being able to see the piece on the bottom or being able to save a piece?
I gotta go with save. Save for me.
Russ?
Yeah, hold. Like, definitely. I feel like the ghost tile is like, it's cheating. Like, it's like, you just need to get good and know what the lines are going to be, you know? So.
Wow. Throwing.
I like that.
Get good scrub. Russ is calling me a scrub because I like the ghost piece.
I've never heard Russ say you just got to get good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is a milestone moment.
Yeah, it's very rare. But
Yeah.
it just shows you his skill level at Tetris, right? Like it's like hidden.
This is true.
Yeah, it's like crouching tiger, hidden dragon for Russ over here. And it's like, he's like, hey, you want to play a game of Tetris? He's like, sure.
All right, so I guess before we move on to the rest of the news stories, let's talk about what we've been playing this week. Russ, you've been playing No Rest for the Wicked. Anybody else been playing that? You guys can't raise your hand because we can't see each. For those of you who noticed that we were like talking over each other a bunch earlier, we're having technical difficulties, and in order to solve that, we've turned our cameras off, so we can't see each other right now. So don't raise your hand.
I've been playing No Rest for the Wicked. I've been trying. So on the Steam Deck, it does, or at least pre-patch. I haven't tried the patch yet. It did have some issues, so it would it seemed like the ceiling could be good enough, like a 30 to 40 FPS, but it would just in some areas just either crash or go down to single digit FPS. So I was able to like get through the tutorial, but there were just some sections where it was just not working for me. So I had to pause. I came back. I'm going to come back post patch, which I think is out now. But it seemed really fun. I can't wait to play more.
Russ, talk about it.
yeah, same experience. This is my first time ever playing an early access game. I just bought the game because I was like, you know what? It's Moon Studios, which made the Ori games. I got a lot of faith in these folks. And it's a genre I don't generally play, but I thought, I think that they've been spending so much time on this thing. You know, they started this after Ori and the Blind Forest and then paused it and then went into Will of the Wisps. So they've been working on this game forever. And I don't like playing games in early access. That's what I learned because, yeah, it's so janky. Like the frame rates were dropping and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is this is not the experience I want. And so I even though I bought it in early access and I played it, I put it on my ROG Ally with the 3080 like XG mobile hooked up, so I had my external GPU. And even then, like at 1440p, locked 30 frames per second, it was still just a stuttery mess. And so I played it for probably 3 hours actually. Like I put a lot of time into it, and I was just like, no, I'm gonna have to wait till later because I'm ruining my own experience with the game. So I just learned, I'm not an early access kind of guy. At least not early access like day one.
I'm looking at it right now on Steam. It has mixed, like it's sitting at mixed right now, which is why I didn't buy it, because I clicked on it. I had seen a bunch of people talking about it, and I was like, oh, this is that game from the Ori people. And then I opened up Steam and I saw it and I was like, oh, maybe I'll pick that up because like everybody's talking about it right now. And I just finished the big game that I've been playing. Maybe I'll pick this up. But then it said mixed. So I was like, yeah, maybe I don't want to pick it up and I'll just wait for it to be done.
It's got really good bones, so that's going to change. It's just everything Russ said is correct, right? Like it's really janky right now. Honestly, even for an early access game, it's rougher than other early access games that I've played. But like you said, it's Moon Studios. They've already got like some performance improvements. I think this is hotfix 2 that released today, so they'll get there. I'm pretty confident in that. But yeah, it's in a rough state at this moment.
All right. Well, what else have you been playing, Russ?
So I've also been playing Fallout 3, which is funny. Like, so I initially installed it on my Steam Deck and then playing it. And, I played a ton of this on the Xbox, all this stuff, and I was like, oh, I'll just jump back into it and kind of play through and have all the benefits of playing it on a modern PC nowadays. And then I went over and I'm testing the MSI Claw because I'm still making a review on this thing. And I got to I installed it and I booted up and then I start up my game and it's like, it says start new game. And I'm like, what do you mean start new game? I want to continue the game I started. There's no cloud saves on this game. And so I'm like, it totally took all the wind out of my sails. I was like, I haven't seen a non-cloud save game on Steam in so long, but this is one of them. And so it's now just a Steam Deck game because I can't play it anywhere else and resume my save. And I thought that was just kind of crazy, And so I wanted to bring that up, and that it was just unexpected that I was like transported back to the mid 2000s without my cloud saves, which is kind of crazy.
That's unfortunate. Apparently all the Ubisoft games, pretty like all the recent ones, don't have cloud save. They don't implement any Steam features, probably out of spite at this point.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But the new Prince of Persia Rogue, the one that the former Dead Cells team folks are working on, that one has cloud save.
Okay.
Yep.
It's interesting, like, because I believe that some of like the Ubisoft games, I believe that they also have their own cloud save solution. Am I wrong?
You might be right. I don't know.
Okay. I'm not sure because I don't play a lot of Ubisoft games. I'm not a huge Ubisoft fan, so I'm not sure about that. So how many hours did you put into Fallout 3, Russ?
Not long, but maybe 2 hours, not that much. The other contrast to that was that Diablo 4 was on sale, and I was like, this is a benchmark I want to use for an MSI Claw, so I ended up buying it. It was like 35 or 40 bucks, and that was good enough for me because I had already bought it on PS5, and I played, I think, like 20 hours in that one. So I go in and I log in and it makes me like sign into BattleNet or whatever. And then sure enough, it just goes and there's cross save. I had no idea. And I'm all of a sudden playing my level, like whatever character, level 28 or whatever. No idea that there was cross save. I must have just missed that or forgotten about it. And so it was like the exact opposite of my Fallout 3 experience where I was like, hey, this is 100 times better than I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to have to start all over, And so just a weird contrast. But yeah, not a lot of time in Fallout 3 yet, but I do want to, I finished the show. I really enjoyed it. And so I want to get back into that universe.
Yeah. Cary, you dipped into the Fallout universe as well, haven't you?
Yeah. So I was also like Russ, my wife and I, we polished off the Fallout TV series, and I absolutely loved it. And I loved just like going on Reddit and seeing people that were like hating on it for other reasons. But then there's like the nuanced people, nuanced takes of like really trying to figure out what's going on there, because there's a lot of information that if you just take stuff at like face value, you're like, oh, that contradicts this and that contradicts that. But then if you like think about it, you're like, wait a minute, that wouldn't make any sense. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So you have to like kind of go into that world of like, there's misinformation and not a bunch of good information in the Fallout universe. So whatever you see might not necessarily be accurate. And there's lots of stuff like that. So I just got a big hankering to play it, and I started up Fallout New Vegas, and I went back to the 360 build of it because that's where I had my save. So rather than play on PC with a bunch of mods and making things infinitely better, I was like, you know what, let me just load up my save. And thankfully, all of my saves have crossed over there. So I just basically started up again. And, you know, it takes a beat to, like, remember your surroundings and where you are. And what was going on, what you're doing. But it's still such a really good game. And, you know, you're just going through it. And it looks dated, obviously. But even with the enhancements that they have on Xbox Series X, it's still a bunch of fun. I really enjoy... You know, there's people that really don't like the Bethesda versions of Fallout for X or Y reasons, but I do really like them. Even Fallout 4, where I can easily say, yeah, that's bad. That's also terrible. That's not good. I still beat Fallout 4 and had a good time with Fallout 4. And Fallout New Vegas is really good. So I got back into that for a bit, not a bunch, because I'm just swamped for time. But yeah, I put in a few hours, and I was happy to be back in there.
Yeah, I definitely want to pick up one of the Fallout games and play some more of it. I've been thinking about trying out Fallout 76 because that's one that I never played. I played all of the Fallout games except for Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 76. And I obviously didn't beat them all because beating games is not something that I usually do. More on that later on. But like that just like my wife and I have 2 episodes left of Fallout, and like you guys, we're loving it. Walton Goggins needs to win something for this because he's amazing in it, in both parts. And for those of you who've watched, you know what I mean. But I definitely want to dip back into that world and experience it, if for no other reason than just to, you know, wander around and listen to the music on like my Pip-Boy radio and just kind of like just wandering around the wasteland and experiencing that, like that Bethesda style of thing, even though I know that like the original ones were not Bethesda. But I think I'm probably going to end up playing New Vegas because everybody says how great that one is, and I own it, but I've never really put any time into it. And I will say, what little time I did, I played on the Steam Deck, and it plays great because somebody went through and made a fantastic what's that Steam input like layout for it that uses gyro, that uses it just feels like a mouse and keyboard. But you have so much, like it feels perfect when you're playing it. So that's what I'm going to definitely be playing at some point in the near future. Rich, what have you been playing, man?
Yeah, so I've been sampling a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to talk about it because I'm going to do a video, but I do want to talk about the same game I've been talking about for weeks, Bellatro. So Bellatro have a new patch that's not out yet, but if you like, it's in beta, so you can download it if you just switch to the beta channel for that game. And they made a bunch of balance changes. I would say on the net, the game is now a little easier than it was, like as you go up in difficulty. So I have been, so like there's this thing where like, I forgot how many decks there are, 15 decks, something like that, like 15 decks or maybe 12 decks and 10 difficulties. So there are like 120 unique combinations of like stakes and decks, difficulties and decks. And so I've been trying to make my way through all of that, and I'm at like 25%. So, and like 50 hours in. So I've got a long way to go, but it's a lot of fun.
Always 50 hours in Bellatro.
Yeah, always Rich coming in. Have you heard about our Lord and Savior, Bellatro?
That's right. Someone said that they commented on my channel. They're like, I'm tired of these Bellatro ads, and they didn't mean just me. They meant from like all YouTubers. I'm like, sometimes people just like things. I love Bellatro. I'm not getting paid for. I just love it. It's a great game. 50 hours in, and I'm like, I can do 50 more. Let's go.
But hey, listen, Bellatro people, Rich would not turn you away. Like,
no, that's a fact. If you want to pay me, I will take it.
Give him some money. He'll keep talking about your damn game, whether you give him money or not. But just pay the man.
It's such a strange thing, right? Like, is it necessary that you say not sponsored? Like
right?
Like, do you just imagine someone saying, I like pizza. Like, oh, I'm tired of all these pizza ads.
Exactly. Yeah, I just like things sometimes. I don't know if that's okay in the YouTuber world, but sometimes I like things.
Yeah, the thing. Not sponsored.
Okay. So first off, full transparency. I did receive my copy of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth from Square Enix. They're not paying me, but they did give me a copy for free. Nice. I finished it yesterday, and oh my God, it is so good. It is so good. It is. I can't imagine anything's going to be better than this year. It's a shame that nobody is playing this game because I cannot stop thinking about it. Last night, I finished the game, and don't worry, I won't do any spoilers. I immediately loaded up an hour-long video that was dissecting the end. And then after that, this morning when I woke up, I was like, I woke up, I came in here, I sat down, and I put on YouTube, and I sat and I watched. I fast forwarded through some parts of it, but it was a 4-hour discussion about the game with Maximilian Dude and the guys from a podcast that I can't remember the name of. And I was just like, I can't stop thinking about the game. Like, I cannot stop thinking about it. So much so that if I turn on my Steam Deck, and you guys can't see it, but the people who are watching the show can see it, I started playing Final Fantasy. Like, I have the Steam version of Final Fantasy VII. Not Rebirth, not Remake, the OG one. And I've started playing that on my Steam Deck because I can't get enough of this world. And I want to... I want to go back to it and find out more. And this is after 71 hours. I rolled credits, and I still have so much stuff that I did not explore because I wanted to find out how the story was going to, like, what story beats we were going to hit before somebody spoiled it for me. So, like, I 100%ed the first zone. I 100%ed the second zone just because I was going around and doing stuff and I was having fun. But then the story was like, okay, like a chain wrapped around my waist or something that was just pulling me. And it's like, okay, you got to play this. You got to find out what's happening with the story. Because I didn't remember anything. I remembered the big story beats about the original, but most of it was just like, it was new to me. I couldn't remember most of this stuff. So I'm having an absolute blast. And I can't wait. I got to wait until 2027 to find out how they're going to conclude this story. And I could not be more hyped. It's so good. If you guys haven't played it, you got to play them. It's so fantastic. Russ, did you ever finish Final Fantasy VII Remake?
No, I'm still on chapter 16. I'm just like in the high rise of the building, basically. I just need to go and do it. I haven't. But there's no rush because I want to play Rebirth on PC. And so I got no rush. Like, I'll just wait for it to come out there and then maybe even wait for it to go on sale first. And so, and when you say 2027, I'm like, oh gosh, screw it. Like, I'll just wait.
Yeah, that's 2027 for the next one. And like, you got plenty of time to get caught up. But I want somebody to talk to about it. So thankfully Jimmy's been playing this. And so when he finishes it, then he and I will probably sit down and record a thing like just an audio thing, not for the YouTube channel, but just like for the like as an audio podcast or something, because that wouldn't perform well on the YouTube channel, having a spoilery discussion of that game. Just like the Zelda discussion that we never had.
Yeah, please do it for FF7 just to make up for the fact that we didn't do it for Tears of the Kingdom. So,
yeah, I feel bad about that because we kept talking about it and then we never did because it took me too long to beat the game. The other game that I've been playing is Black Mesa, which just got an update. It was in the first person. What's the fest? First person shooter fest,
FPS
right?
Fest, yeah, FPS Fest.
I picked that up and I played a little bit of that, and wow, they did a great job. Like the fans who made that game, if you don't know, it's a remake of the first Half-Life made by fans, and they did a fantastic job. Like there's extra characters and like people are having discussions and stuff that were not in the original. And I've played the beginning of the first Half-Life a million times. So immediately upon launching Black Mesa, I was like, oh, that's new. That's new. It's like the very first time that I saw Star Wars, but it was letterboxed because I grew up watching Star Wars on a 4:3 screen where it was not letterboxed. And so the first time that I saw it letterboxed, I was like, oh, there's another Jawa there? I didn't know about that. Like, I didn't know what up until that point, I was like, well, letterbox is the worst. Black bars on my stuff. Get that out of here. I don't want that. And then I saw Star Wars letterbox and I was like, oh, I get it now. I was missing out and I didn't understand that before, but now I understand it. And this is kind of that same feeling where you're like, oh, this is new. That's different. I like that. So Black Mesa, I think it's on sale right now for $3, if I'm remembering correctly. It's a really good deal.
Nice.
All right, back to the news. This is a tweet from, some of you guys might know this guy, Retro Gamecore. He tweeted this out about Asus is extending their warranties. Russ, you want to tackle this?
Yeah, so I had to dig pretty far to actually find it. It was like I saw an email circulating around. I guess basically anybody who had an RMA on their ROG Ally officially, like, got an email about this basically. But then I was just seeing screenshots being circulated. I'm like, okay, where is this? And so I had to find it in like the Asus blog under their news section. And yeah, they had a post there that said basically, we are going to extend the warranty on the SD card reader for an additional year, so 2 years, which I thought was awesome because that was like my #1 request in my 6 months later video of the ROG Ally. And then also, if within 90 days of purchase, and if you bought it from Asus directly, then they would give you just a full, you could return your device basically. And then finally, if you have any SD cards that are borked because of the SD card reader, if you send them the card and then send them proof of purchase, they will reimburse you. And so it's kind of a pain for me because I've had like 2 SD card readers go out on my ROG Allies. It's not through the official RMA. I just kind of send it back to my guy and then they send it back. But I just threw my SD cards away because, like, on one of them, it was just the reader that wouldn't read them anymore. The card was fine. But on the other one, it was actually like making the card itself not work. But I just threw it away. I was like, screw it, And I couldn't tell. Maybe it was like a bad card from Amazon kind of thing either, But anyway, yeah. So I'm not going to get that reimbursement. But yeah, it's cool that they're doing that. A lot of people are arguing that, or complaining that it was too late, and I agree. Like, there's probably something they should have addressed like last year, But I like that they actually did it, But yeah, it's just, it is what it is, and I like the fact they extended the warranty.
That's one of the things that everybody kept saying about Asus. And like, they were like, oh, they're not going to support it. They're not going to support it. This is a bad, like, don't buy this because they're not going to support it. And I will be completely honest, of all of my handhelds, that's my least favorite. Like the Asus ROG Ally is the one that I like the least. That being said, I still think it's a pretty good piece of hardware. SD card or reader aside, because I never put an SD card in it because I was afraid. So like, mine could be bad, it could be good, who knows? But everybody kept saying Asus is not going to support it, and now they're showing, hey, we're going to, extend the support on this. And I know that they were talking about software updates and stuff like that, so I get that. But they're treating this like any other laptop, which is essentially what these things are anyway. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I like that there, and that was the thing I saw, or I said when I first saw this, like Russ, you were saying we just saw the email circulating, and the thing I said about it was that they clearly are now invested in this handheld ecosystem, And that's why I'm happy to see this, right? Like, obviously for the people that were impacted and things like that, but the fact that they are taking this serious just shows that they want to really just be serious in this market. So I like to see that.
Yeah, and with the rumors, it's not really rumors because they essentially said they're working on a second one at some point. I don't remember, like 6 months ago they said it, and we all reacted with like, why would you mention that already? Yeah, like that's going to kill sales of the first one. But yeah, like with the rumors that they've got another one coming, it's good for them to say, see, we're supporting our product, we're making sure that our customers are happy. And that's a good thing because you want more competition. Like it's always better if there's more competition in these spaces.
Yep. Yeah, the one thing that I would say that perhaps a lot of people don't really appreciate is that let me back this up a second. When the Switch OLED came out, I had contacted GPD. I said, hey, if you guys can get a handle on any of these OLED panels to put them in your handheld, that would be dope. What some people may not be aware of is that in the Chinese handheld market in Shenzhen, they're not actually developing any displays and stuff. They are just getting whatever surplus stock they have. And there's like a huge supply of different types of parts and stuff. And, we see this with Ambernick, we see this with all the other handheld makers. When all of the displays that they get, there's like a smorgasbord of parts that they have available to them, and they can just kind of kit bash this stuff all together. One thing that I didn't anticipate, because we were never able to actually see Switch OLED displays anywhere, really. So I was like, oh, we're probably not going to be able to have it. The GP2 Mini is using the Asus RG Ally screen, the new one, the 2024 edition. So as a bonus for us, for Asus entering into this, is that other devices have been able to leverage their panels that have been able to come out. So if Asus could make an OLED VRR panel for handhelds, I'm even more excited for it. I'm like, yes, please, Asus, make more panels of different quality, because that's as a trickle down effect of these parts becoming available in other places. Because again, for companies like GBDI or whoever, they're going to maybe sell 5,000 to 10,000 of these, which isn't like a tremendous amount, right? It's very, very little. So having surplus parts of that is not a bunch to ask for. It's not like it's like a tall order. So getting that is pretty big. So I'm really hopeful that maybe we'll get there, because I've been reviewing Asus's laptops, and their OLED stuff is unreal good. So
yeah, I got one right here. Like you can kind of see it flashing a little every once in a while behind me, and I've got a video coming out about this laptop at some point in the near future. But oh my god, the screen on this laptop,
it's like silk,
blows my mind.
It's like silk on your eyeballs. It's
so beautiful. It's unbelievably good.
Just let those pixels cascade across my iris. It's next level. They do a fantastic job, and they deserve a lot of credit for the effort that they put in.
Yeah, and that's why the ROG Ally, it doesn't have an OLED screen,
right?
But the screen on that thing is fantastic.
It is, yeah. In terms of motion clarity and other things, what you would care about more from a gaming perspective, it does a very good job. In terms of like image quality, there's definitely like the Legion Go. Image quality, you look at that thing and it like blast your eyeballs of image quality. Like even for you, Bill, I think you appreciate the screen on that a lot more than, and it is a very nice screen. But yeah, the Asus RG Ally is definitely far more interested in VRR and motion clarity than everything else.
Yeah. Now, just remind me, the Asus RG Ally came out. When did it come out? Was it July?
I don't recall the exact time, but it was last year, right?
Summer.
Last year.
Yeah, it was in the summertime, I believe.
Yeah, either July or August, but I want to say August.
Yeah, so I would anticipate we'll probably see something similar around summertime if the rumors are true that they are making another piece of hardware,
right?
Which I don't see them not doing. It's like they're going to treat it like laptops, and I'm fine with that, because that means whenever somebody decides, okay, now's my chance to buy a handheld, they don't have to be like, oh, well, this thing is 3 years old. So now I'm buying something that's 3 years old. So back to Russ, Delta, you know, it's funny. We saw an emulator show up on iOS. Russ and I talked about it last week. And then after we recorded, but before the episode came out, the emulator got taken down because apparently the person who, and I'm not throwing accusations, but what everybody else was saying is the person who made it, they didn't make it. They stole it from somebody else. But now Delta, which is, I guess, a good emulator, I haven't tried it yet. I've installed it, haven't tried it, is now on iOS. And Russ, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'd say that Delta is a pretty emulator and it's a simple emulator. It's a very Apple emulator, if that makes any sense, in the sense that it just kind of it takes care of a lot of the work for you. All you have to do is just throw in your games, and it plays, you know, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, NES, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64. So all the Nintendo systems up to Gen 4, 5, whatever that is. And so, yeah, that's great. And you drop your games in. Other than Nintendo DS, which is also supported, that one needs BIOS files. Everything else is just plug and play. The touchscreen controls on it are decent for a touchscreen emulator, you know, but it also has controller support. But, you know, the thing about it is that it's simple in the sense that there are no, like, you cannot change aspect ratio, you cannot do any sort of scaling or shaders or any other kind of stuff. All the things that I've come to expect, you know, from a retro, like, game enthusiast kind of perspective, they're not there. But it's pretty awesome to be able to play your Game Boy, like, you know, Pokemon game on your phone without having to have an additional device. It's a compromised experience because of the controls and whatnot, but it's still exciting. And the fact that we can just get it on the App Store, and, you know, a couple days after it came out, it was #1 free app on the App Store, which is just, it just goes to show, like, how long people have been waiting for this. You know, I got my first iPhone in 2008, and I used to jailbreak and sideload and do all that crap. And then I also tried Alt Store, which is made by the developer Delta as well, which you can then sideload, but then you gotta, like, reload it every week. Basically every 7 days you have to refresh your credentials, and that always, like, I'm not consistent enough of a guy to be able to keep doing that. So this takes all that out. It's just free app, emulator, Nintendo games. It's amazing.
Did you try Phantom Hourglass on it?
No, I haven't. I didn't do a lot of Nintendo DS on it, to be honest. I hadn't even thought about that. But that would probably be a good fit because that's very touchscreen oriented, you know? So you'd be able to, like, move Link around and stuff with your finger.
Yeah.
And touchscreen is supported on that bottom screen. So.
Yeah. My one, not worry, but my one wonder is there a way to close the DS when you're using this emulator? Because there's a puzzle in that game where that's the solution. Is you close it, and by closing it you are solving the puzzle, and I wonder if that's even a possibility.
I felt like a genius when I figured that out.
Yes, everybody did.
Yeah, when I was like,
so
he's like,
probably
press
not.
it against it. So I was like, good.
I was just saying, you know, probably not, but there are ROM hacks of it that allow you to get past that point. So you could just load the ROM hack of it instead.
okay.
Anyway, sorry. The lag, I think the lag's all on my end.
Go ahead,
That's why
Cary.
I'm the one keeps cutting her off. So.
When I first started doing it, I was like using the stylus to, like, make the map. So I was like drawing it. And, like, I did a little bit of it, and I was like, okay, nothing's happening. Press the map, and I was just like, oh, and I opened it back up, and it's like, boom, 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 and I was like, that whole thing of, it's such a simple puzzle, but also having the Zelda fanfare happen when you're opening up the DS was outrageous. Like, it was just like, you know, even though it wasn't like anything, I felt like I had an IQ of 200 after doing that. And that's like, I think, the special sauce for a lot of Zelda games, which is why I didn't like Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah, the pre-baked puzzles of one solution, figure it out. It's not really that hard, but the Nintendo sauce of, like, making you feel like a genius for figuring out something like that by just using something in the environment or doing something with it it was awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're on the retro topic, so we might as well go to the fight that we were having, where I we were talking about retro games, and I said, well, what do you guys think about CRT shaders or something like that? And half of the guys in our Discord were like, I don't like them. And the other half, well, anyway.
I don't know if Russ gave his opinion, and Kyle isn't here. So Kyle is the only one that was, I'll say, on my side. But
I forget what side you were on, Rich. What?
Yeah. Well, okay. If I'm going to start it,
start us off. Was it good or bad?
I also don't. This is not a strongly held opinion. I don't care that much. But if I have to pick one, right? Like, I'm picking no CRT shader. I mean, and I think this came up because of Bellatro, right? Because Bellatro has a default CRT.
You shut it off.
Russ shut it off. Russ shut it off. Yeah, so he started his conversation and didn't even tell us which he prefers.
I'm gonna save him for last because I want like micro hooking on YouTube exactly. So so Rich says get rid of CRT shaders. Cary,
I'm a big fan of CRT shaders. If they're done well, like they need to be done well. If they just have like a crappy mask on it, then no, I won't do it. But if you have like some of the more advanced ones that are in RetroArch, I really enjoy them. And I brought it up that even when I did my retro video that I did that failed terribly, I used the CRT shader, but then in editing I like tilted it and I panned through it so it looked like I was using a camera, like a real camera. I actually convinced a few people that I used a real camera to do that shot.
Nice.
And I was like, no, that was emulation and just editing. Like, wow. So when you do like race the beam type of CRT shaders and stuff, where you have the phosphor glow that will like light up on a pixel and then like kind of like strobe a bit on each different pixel, like how it is. Yeah, it produces a reasonable result. And none of you guys can see it because your video is off. But I guess when the video comes out, I'm showing off my RetroTINK 4K right now, and this has different different profiles that you can make that will resemble like different types of PVMs and stuff. But now I'm like so hooked onto it because I just put composite into it and then I put component into it, and I'm like, oh man, I got to get S-video cables for all of my old stuff, and like so I'm like now I'm like looking up other stuff to buy just to improve the experience. But like doing HDR on like Super Mario 64 and like, black frame insertion and all this other stuff, and I'm like, oh yes, this looks amazing. I still like playing on CRTs or PVMs, but having this be like a magic box that sits between whatever system I put it into and like an OLED. I have a CX48 that supports BFI and 4K and HDR and all that other stuff. So when you're doing it, it's really impressive. It really is impressive to have like a magic upscaler for old systems. So even just from outside of an emulation point of view, there are profiles where you can make CRT like looks, and I still like that if they're done well.
Now you got to be pretty dialed in to know what a RetroTINK is. Can you just really quickly in one sentence tell everybody what the RetroTINK does and how much it costs?
Oh boy.
Yeah, so for all intents and purposes, it's a magic box that will upscale anything that like your older appliances that you're going to be plugging into this. So like a Super Nintendo, and it doesn't even matter if it's PAL or NTSC, it'll fix it so that it'll work. Normally, if you had a PAL box, you would not be able to play it on NTSC hardware, just because you couldn't. And RetroTINK will solve that for you. So it's a magic upscaler. It's a magic box that will take video in from anything and put it onto a modern display and make it look fantastic. And it costs like $750.
And I want one, and I would never use it.
Yeah.
Like, I want it, but it would just sit there taking up space.
Yeah. This is where you kind of like, to wrap up where we're talking about, you are probably better off just using emulators and finding a very good CRT shader and getting that experience. Like, if you could, like, make like a fishbowl kind of edges on there, if you really wanted to amp it up. I would just say just doing a phosphor glow with a nice mask is really all you need for a CRT shader to really get that old school feel, especially on an OLED, and you can do BFI on RetroArch easily. So you just need a nice OLED display, and I think your money would be far better spent, right? You can get a 42-inch C3 for like $750. It's on sale all the time. The new C4s are coming out, so if you were going to spend $700 and $800, you're probably better off.
What are these words?
I don't know. He's just making the numbers.
The 42-inch C4. What is this? I'm looking at
LG's
okay,
LG's OLEDs. So if you were to do their C3 is where their old model, and you can get those for like $750. They're on sale routinely now. That's a fantastic PC monitor, but it's also very good for doing old school emulation and passing through CRT shaders with BFI. So yeah, it would probably be a better investment overall to just get a 42-inch OLED, just because I think everyone should move over to 42-inch for their PC monitor and just accept it.
I'm sitting here on a 27. Well, as the resident retro guy, I made everybody wait really, really long to find out what Russ thinks about this. Russ, CRT shaders or no?
Yeah, I'm split on it. I like both, but when I'm playing on a TV, I tend to use CRT shaders because I like the depth that'll come from the pixels. You know, when I'm playing on a handheld, I like the pixels to be crisp. And so usually on a smaller handheld, I don't put any shaders on there unless there's like scaling issues and like the pixels are off balance. Then I'll use usually non CRT shader, just like a scanline shader or like an interpolation shader so that I can just at least balance the pixels and make them a little bit softer. Because a lot of the handhelds don't have the power to run a good CRT shader anyway. But yeah, when playing on a TV, I do like a CRT shader. I actually have the LG C4, but I've never done, and that's our main TV actually, but I've never done emulation on it. Now you're getting me thinking about that.
It's amazing.
You got to grab your old Mac Mini.
Yeah.
And because call back to pre-show where we were talking about old Mac Minis and what the hell we're going to do with them. Well, you got a video about it, Russ. Now you can test it out.
Yeah. Once you go OLED for CRT shaders and BFI, yeah, that's when the magic happens. That's when it's just like frightening, like it's frighteningly looks like how it used to look. You can really dial it in. And then if you wanted to, you could also do like an overlay that like has like an old TV or whatever so that it, you know, fits that 4:3 in. And it's sometimes convincing to me that I'm like looking at like an old TV. It's really a fantastic way. But now that I have a RetroTINK, I want to buy a European Amiga A500 and just like slam the SCART cable into it. Like I've never used SCART anything, right? But now I want to.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I
tweeted this out. I said, "Hey, everybody, you know, we were arguing about this. I want to know what everybody thinks." And I'm losing because I like CRT shaders. 41.6% said yes. 58.4% said no. You guys can still vote on this. It's over on my Twitter, which is @NerdNestTV. And you can go vote on that and tell everybody what you think and reply to it for the reasons why. Russ has his hand up again. A text hand up. What's up, Russ?
I had a question for Cary actually about the RetroTINK. Like, is it a good match with like a Mr. FPGA? Like, you could just basically have one of those into the RetroTINK and just have all of your console stuff like figured out right then and there.
I guess you could because they do have profiles for that. It seems outlandish that you would do that. Like, I feel like a Mr. should be just doing it already. The one thing that the RetroTINK does is it's just super rapid. I have pushed it in a way that you could actually see the RetroTINK breaking, because it's taking that frame and trying to like shove it out as fast as it can so that there's no delay, but with certain profiles and like what it's trying to do with its upscaling, you can actually see the edges of where it's failing, almost like FSR3 or FSR2. You know, like when you're moving fast in like a FSR2 and you see that like frizzle that happens around a character where there's like, you know, God of War is a big one, right? Because he's always like pretty much in the same place and everything's moving around him and you see all this like frizzling that's happening around the edges of him. It's kind of like the same thing where if you have high contrast, Super Mario 64 has a bunch of high contrast big old polygons, and when you're moving that around you could see the edges of it where it like gets kind of messed up with different profiles that they have. I don't know, it seems like that would be exceedingly expensive to do like Mister and then to a RetroTINK, because you just like get FPGA to your TV. It just seems like an FPGA fest.
Yeah, it'd be interesting because that'd be like a
totally
$1,200. So
yeah. So you could do the RetroTINK wants the best video it possibly can get. So as long as you're doing like VGA, you're in a good spot. And like doing composite to the RetroTINK is kind of crappy. You really shouldn't do that. As soon as you go to like the even S video, the improvement is vast. So there also is this like enhanced S video that people have made for the RetroTINK, and it makes like, it's crazy, right? Because you just have the two different signals that S video provides, as opposed to like what you get all the different sync information from VGA. But you can make enhanced S video effectively as good as like SCART or VGA, and it's mind blowing. It's like, oh, you just have those two signals. Now we have all the information we need to like, you know, do everything we need. It's impressive how much of an improvement S video enhanced is over S video and over composite to the RetroTINK. So
wow.
You really do need at least a good cable going in, and I think you can get DB15 VGA to out from the Mister, can't you? You could also just do HDMI if you wanted to. You can do HDMI. That it takes HDMI as a source. You could do switch, right? Like you can plug the switch into the RetroTINK, and it will upscale nicely to 4K in different things. So if you wanted like to improve switch quality, you could do that with the RetroTINK, which is kind of an absurd thing. It's like, I want to make 4K switch games, and it does a decent enough job. But there's also that same thing of where maybe just scaling it also looks fine. But yeah, you could totally do that.
This conversation makes me think of those guys, and maybe one of you is one of those guys, but like the guys who like they buy their they make sure that they buy their record player is like from 1973, and then they're like, oh, I got on this forum and I found out that this is the best amp to go with this record player, and then I had to get this preamp for this thing, and then I got these $1,200 headphones, and like they're all of this, like you're spending so much money, and you don't have to, because you can still just play the games, you can still just listen to the music or whatever, but you end up buying this one thing almost ties your hands, and you're like, I guess I gotta buy this other stuff in order to make this thing even better.
Yeah, well, the S video thing is really a big improvement, and it does take HDMI. So if you have a Mister out to HDMI, then you're fine. But then, you know, you're getting back to the point, like, you know, if we come back full circle, you may just be better off just buying the latest, best OLED monitor, and just doing emulation straight off a PC and just doing CRT shaders. I would wager that you'd have a really good time with just that as well, and then just having a really good PC monitor to boot.
All right, well, that sounds awesome. I was going to talk about Little Big Planet 3 servers getting shut down, but we're already at an hour and a half. So what I think I'm going to do instead is I'm going to jump to a thing that somebody posted in one of our previous episodes. They said, this is from Nucleo Synthes. He said, those are really bad sales figures for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Console exclusivity may not have been a very smart move. Bill, I share your hope that the third installment, but I just really don't want to play Rebirth on console. I'm holding out for PC relief. That's pretty much everybody is, and Square telegraphed that was going to be a possibility because they put the first one out. You know what I mean? They said the Steam version might even surpass the PS5 edition in sales, just like we saw with Helldivers 2. And I agree with all that. I think that the PC is probably the better place to play this game when it comes out. But I saw a lot of people talking about the sales numbers for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And the thing that I feel like everybody's ignoring is, like, they're looking at this and they're like, this game is dead because it's not selling very well. But I feel like everybody's in the same boat with Russ, where they're just like, I'm just going to wait and play it on PC.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely two ways to look at that. I'm in the boat with Russ as well. I would only ever same thing for Ragnarok. Ragnarok I didn't get on PlayStation because I was upset that I played God of War on PS4, and then when the PC version came out, I was like, well, I already played this, so I don't know why I would play it again on PC. So I'm not waiting. I'm not going to get it on PlayStation, so I'm going to wait for the PC version. But then we also have the thing that we talked about in this very episode is that is these new platforms the bigger problem on the horizon that what we're actually seeing. It's not so much that people are waiting, it's just that the people that are interested in these banger games that used to be cash cows, we're not the majority anymore. And the majority is Fortnite and Roblox, and what Game Pass is hoping to be as a next platform. Is that also the problem?
Well, for this particular game, I don't think that that's really the case. I think that what's going on with this game is PS5 versus PS4.
Sure.
Way fewer systems that it can play it. So, of course, there's going to be less people that are playing it. It's a sequel.
Yep.
So if you didn't play the first one, you're definitely not going to play the second one. And there's a lot of people who played the first one and they were like, I don't like what they did with the story, so I'm just not going to play the next one.
I mean, the sequel thing is big, right? Like, there's a tweet from Dave Oshry. I don't know if you guys will see my screen if I share it, but I'll share it anyway because I know it'll show up on the video. Dave Oshry, who is and I don't know if I'm mispronouncing his name, but he's CEO or founder of New Blood, who published Dusk and Ultra Kill and A Medieval. And so he says, I mean, it's a sequel to a story-based game, so if you haven't played or finished the first one, chances are you aren't getting the sequel, so naturally it will sell less. Seems logical to me. I don't know, LL. So, like, I mean, like, whatever your pull is for sales of Remake, like, it has to be smaller for Rebirth, right? Like, there's no way Rebirth outsells Remake. Yeah. It can't go up.
Right. It's a single player story based game, and the story is the main draw to this game.
Yeah.
You're not going to have more people buy the second one than will buy the first one. That's just not going to happen.
Right. Right. And then there's that is a little disconcerting for like the third game, right? Like we're hoping that the third game comes out in 2027 as they promised, but like, I don't know, do they look at this and get worried? Personally, I don't think so. I think all of what we're saying is true, right? So like, we go back to the fact that people will buy this when it comes to PC. I think it has a longer tail than, I don't know, I guess the first one did. But yeah, I think it has a longer tail than most PlayStation games or most of RPGs would normally have. So I think we'll see it sell well when it comes to PC, and I think it'll be fine, and they'll still make the third one, and it'll be whatever. It's not a big deal.
I'm 100% sure that they will still make the third one, and there's something that was really interesting is that one of the reasons that they were able to make this game in 3 years, and I know it took 4 years, but one of those years was spent making the DLC for the first one. So they really spit this game out in 3 years.
Yeah. From
when the last one. And the reason why they were able to do that so quickly, number one, they had Sony was helping them dealing with the new hardware. Number two, they retained 80% of the people who were working on the first one stayed to work on the second one.
That's huge.
So they didn't have to train people on this is how we do this is how we do that, this is how we do this third thing. Everybody who was already there already knew all of the fixes that they had figured out the first time around. And so it made it much quicker. And they already have the story done. They already have the world built. Now they just have to basically, I'm not saying that their job is easy, but they got to basically take the Lego bricks and put them together, and then we'll have it. And I can definitely see them getting that done in 3 years. And I don't see any way that they walk away from this as a series, even if it's not selling as per their expectations. What do you think, Russ?
So I was just going to mention, sometimes a sequel will boost everything. So think about Dune Part 2. That has sold already more in box office, 200 million more than the first one did. That means more people are watching it. And so if it's a quality thing where it's like, if the quality is so good on something and the buzz is there, then it's going to drive sales for the first one too, even if it is a sequel, because people are like, oh, I need to go back and watch it. Fallout sales are going super high because of this TV series. And so it's all a good move for Square. They just got to keep pushing it, right? Keep making good games. All the other stuff will fall into place. They just need to make it more accessible. Put it on PC for us.
Yeah. And I do see them doing that. Although I'm sure Cary's right that it's going to come to the Epic Games Store first, and that sucks.
But you know what they're going to do 3 years after the third one's released?
What's that?
They're gonna release all three as one. For whatever the price is. So like
Final Fantasy VII what are they going to call it? It's got to have a RE at the beginning of it. Recompilation.
Yeah, recompilation. I like it. And it'll sell. They're going to have legs. That's what I see for this series.
Oh, absolutely. Like once this comes to PC, this is going to sell like hotcakes because it is so good. And I feel like a lot of people keep hearing about how great it is, but they don't have a PS5.
Yeah.
And they're like, I know that there's like 50 million PS5s out there, but there's a lot of people out there that are just like, well, I don't want to buy another thing.
It's a crazy thing, though.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. That seems like I've heard nothing but great things, and when I watch things of it, I'm like, man, that looks amazing. All right, what else is going on? Like, how could everyone collect? I don't know. It's a different time. Everything's topsy turvy, man. I can't even predict anything anymore.
Yeah. Well, I guess just to bring this all the way back around to what we started the show with Microsoft trying to turn the Xbox into a PC. Do you guys see any world where Sony does something similar? Because for me, I don't see that ever happening.
I don't know if okay, I'll go because I have some thoughts. I can't see people's faces, right? So like,
I know it sucks.
I do have some thoughts. I think that a lot of people saw the video that I published about PlayStation bringing trophies and things like that, and some people in the comments touched on what I'm thinking as well, which is not only maybe they are thinking about like day and date release to PC, but I think they are thinking about their own PlayStation OS, their own PlayStation Store launcher. This could be years and years and years away, but I can't rule it out for Sony. And Sony has, a lot of their consoles have been Linux based. So I think they see SteamOS and they're like, yeah, that's not a bad idea. And it wouldn't necessarily be a full-fledged PC the same way the Steam Deck is, but maybe they do something where the next Sony Vita is PC x86 based and it just launches to Sony OS, and you could wipe the OS if you wanted, but it launches to SteamOS. Sony OS.
Russ, are you buying a PlayStation OS PC?
I don't know. That seems really limited. I don't know. It really would depend on what they offer in the catalog and whatnot. I have no faith in Sony and handhelds at this point. Like, I feel like they'll just abandon it as soon as they can, And so, I'm not really sure if I would want to spend the price it would require, like say it's like $400, whatever, to get something that can play, say, PS4 games in a handheld. I don't know if that's enough for me to justify that price point if I'm going to be limited to just Sony games. And so, yeah, I think a Steam Deck is just going to be a better value altogether.
I agree with that. Like Microsoft is doing this thing where it's like the Xbox is a PC. I do not see Sony ever doing that with their hardware because they just love proprietary stuff so much. But I do see them switching to dropping their games on PC. Like we've seen the evidence that they've been doing it. Day and date. Maybe only for games as a service games. Cary, do you think that day and date PC releases from Sony are always going to be limited to those gas games, as you always call them?
No. Even when they started coming to PC, it was like that. This was like I've been saying that for a while. So there's like receipts of me saying day and date, and it's always been like something, right? So it's like there's definitely a thing that they have to tiptoe around, because if Microsoft just lets it rip, right? Like there's been no shortage of Xbox drama with all the nonsense that's been going on with them potentially being third party, Xbox console no longer existing. They've allowed that stuff to exist and like be circulated and talked about, whereas Sony is very, very upfront to be like, they've said that day and date with gas is going to happen, and I think that they're approaching this in a way that how they have to approach it, right? I do think that their PC games are going to be coming day and date, just because again, I'm coming from the point of view that things are changing for all of us, and like I can only speak anecdotally when I look at my nephews and my son, and they all play on PC, all of them. They don't play on console, not a one. They have an iPad and a PC, and that's where they play. And that's the new generation. So
I make a point of this in my video too, where PC gaming, like what was it, 2017? So five years ago, not 2017, like 2019, about 5 years ago. I think it was 16 million users on Steam concurrent, right? And we just passed 36 million concurrent users on Steam as the peak. So like PC gaming in the last about 5 years has more than doubled. And I think both Microsoft and Sony have both said that the console growth has not been what they wanted. Yeah. So like, you're right, Cary, right? Like PC space is growing. And also one more thing you said was how like there wasn't this hoopla for Xbox's strategy with regard to like bringing games to PC. And I think you're right. But also, none of this happened overnight, right? Like they didn't bring Xbox games to PC for a long time. And then they did, but only on Microsoft Store and only some games. And then they brought all of them day and date. And then they brought all of them day and date on Steam. And now it's not just PC, it's also PlayStation and Switch. So like, there's been this gradual thing that's happening with Xbox. And you said it before, where it's like, Sony's kind of doing the same thing, just they're a little bit lagging behind, right? Like they're like 5 years or 6 years behind where Microsoft was or is. And I see the same thing. I think they're going to follow that same road. And right now, all roads seem to be leading to PC somehow.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Phil Spencer specifically said right now, it is very hard for us to make up what we lose because they sell the Xbox at a loss. And they said it's hard for us to make up for that loss by selling software. And it wasn't Jim Ryan, but it was the guy before Jim Ryan who had said something recently, like he doesn't work at PlayStation anymore.
Oh, Sean.
But he kind of echoed the same thing and was like, yeah, he said something like Moore's Law is slowing down or something like that. And because of that, it makes it harder for us to like make money with this what's the word I'm looking with this model.
Yeah. Right.
And so we have to go after the PC. We have to put our games on more platforms because there's just too many wallets out there that we can't reach. We can't reach into those wallets and take any money out unless we give them a way to give us money. And Microsoft understands this. Sony seems to understand this. The only ones who don't seem to understand this is Nintendo, and they have nothing to push them in that direction because the Switch was a juggernaut. And so they were just like, yeah, hey, guess what? It's working just fine for us. But they were also not spending nearly as much money on making their games as everybody else was, I think. What were you going to say, Cary?
So really quick, I think the difference for all of them, the pains that both Microsoft and Sony are feeling is because they are using the latest and greatest hardware that they can, as the hardware has been developing, there hasn't been the decrease in how much it costs to produce it. The cost has remained relatively steady, and they have not been able to extract more on their hardware sales. whereas Nintendo has been using old hardware and has been able to extract maximum value on the hardware for every hardware piece that they sell. So it's still, Nintendo's in a better spot overall in a lot of different ways. Also, having a lower hardware footprint, hardware ceiling, means that the games that they're developing aren't these massive things, but they still are doing exceptionally good image quality inside of that hardware space. So it behooves them in two different ways. It sucks for them on the emulation side because lower powered hardware is easier to emulate. But I don't think that they have the same types of pains that Sony and Microsoft do. And Microsoft was the worst because they were in third place. So they've been able to springboard off faster. So I still, again, believe that Sony's going to go first party on their PC day and date, and it's really just a messaging problem more than anything else.
Yeah, and by the way, speaking of Sony, there's rumors that right now that they are in talks to bring Helldivers to Xbox. Which,
get out of here! That is crazy.
I saw rumors. It's rumors. Who knows if it's true or not? Oh, boy, oh boy.
Yeah, I mean,
that would be amazing if they did.
MLB The Show has been on Xbox already, so it's not like it's unheard of for Sony.
Yeah, but is MLB The Show first? I mean, is that a first? That's not a first party.
It is, but that was driven by MLB because they hold. Yeah, that was MLB forced Sony to publish on Xbox.
I think the crazier bit is like, I play on Xbox because of Game Pass. Would Helldivers 2 be a Game Pass title? Like that is a bigger question. Like, would Microsoft pay a bundle to Sony up front, like, hey, here's a few $1 million, just bring Helldivers to us on Game Pass, and then because how many people would buy it on Xbox? Maybe a bunch, but not a tremendous amount. I don't know how much development would cost to do it. I don't know.
You mean Helldivers?
Yeah, Helldivers 2. How much?
Oh, a bunch of people would buy that because it's in the zeitgeist. Like, these people were talking about it all the time. Real quick, here's the rumor. I'm going to put it on screen. This is from Game Rant. It says, on the latest episode of the Xbox Era podcast, Nick, sorry, I don't listen to the podcast, so I don't know who that is, but it says that they are notable insider. Okay. They claims that they've heard very, very early preliminary discussions about the possibility of Helldivers 2 coming to Xbox, with the new interim CEO Hiroki Totoki recently taking charge of Sony Interactive Entertainment. They suggest that PlayStation executive may be a little more open to experimenting with aggressive multi-platform strategy. With a multiplayer game that depends on having the biggest audience possible, it makes perfect sense to bring a game like that to the opposing console.
What times we live in.
I know.
Like, even if that's not true, right? Just the fact that the fact that we can find it believable, and that we agree this is probably the right thing to do. Yeah, I think that alone, I mean,
they're businesses, right? They just want to make money. Like, there's no there's no allegiance to anything. As much as anyone wants to believe that they're gonna do only like the hardcore fan thing, they want money, and they really like money, and they would do things to get money. So yeah, I mean, when it comes down to, when you boil down to it, and again, those shareholders wanting number go up, there's things that you have to do to make number go up.
Yeah, and I can see that happening for a game like Helldivers 2. Never will it happen for a game like Spider-Man or God of War or something like that. It has to be a multiplayer online style game in order for that to make sense. This has come
up before for the GeForce Now, is that you can't play Sony games on GeForce Now because Sony doesn't allow it to happen. If Xbox could load up the Steam store, could you play God of War on an Xbox via Steam PC?
Literally. I have that in my script. I was like, picture a world where you can install PlayStation games via Steam on the next Xbox.
Yeah, this world's topsy-turvy. No one can say anything. Insane. Everything is like a dark horse. I wouldn't even place money on this. I'm like, you know what? I'm out. I'll just wait for the carnage to happen. Whatever chaos will unfold in front of me shall happen.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to go back like 10 years and say to myself, to my past self, hey, someday there's going to be Microsoft Xbox games on PlayStation, and there's going to be PlayStation games on Xbox, and all of those games are also going to be on PC. And it's really not going to matter which box you decided to buy, because the games will just be available on all of them anyway, unless it's a Nintendo thing, in which case it's only on Nintendo.
Get out of here.
I want to say for Nintendo, like, I'll leave it on this. It's not just sales, right? Like, if Nintendo was not doing well, it would take a hostile takeover for them to do anything differently. Like, they will do what they're going to do. I think they think as a toy company first, and that is what drives their design. The Switch is a toy first, and it happens to play video games.
And with that, I think that it's time to wrap up this this episode. You guys could have been anywhere, but you decided to hang out with us, and for that, I appreciate it. If you want to get this show ad-free, there is a link in the description down below. It'll take you to the Patreon. Thank you to the patrons who support, and everybody who uses channel memberships to support as well. Cary, what videos we got coming, man?
I'm finishing up my review on the iNeo Flip DS. I have finally sent that out to me, so I have the production version of that, and I'm working through that. So hopefully, probably Tuesday, that video will come out.
Okay, so that'll be the same day that this comes out. So after you finish watching this, go watch Cary's video. Russ, what's next for you, man?
I think I'm going to finally finish my MSI Claw review. I've been putting it off for so long, just because I'm not really enjoying the device, but it's way past like my return window when I bought it. So I gotta do something with this thing. So I've been trying to think of different angles, and it was initially going to be like, yeah, this thing is okay, but too expensive. And then another angle is like, just how bad is it? And so I'm not sure where I'm going to land. I got more footage to film and kind of put it all together. It'll mostly be like a demonstration of why it's not as good as all the other handhelds that are out there, but then also a celebration of why the other handhelds are so good. And so I think that's probably where I'm going to go with it.
Awesome. Rich, what's your next video? You keep talking about your script. What are you writing about?
Yeah, so it's all about this, right? Like the future of Xbox, but I look at it through the lens of the relationship that Microsoft and Valve have had over the years. So I mentioned a lot about like 2012. So I'm looking at like how Gabe was looking at Microsoft in 2012. And I think of that as like Cold War One, right? Like they had a little bit of a Cold War. And I think we're headed into another Cold War, but now they're more partners, but they're still going to compete moving forward in the same space, but they're more partners than they were back in 2012.
So like they're standing next to each other, and their pinkies are touching, and they're thinking about maybe holding hands.
Exactly.
All right.
Maybe. Yeah.
There you go.
Yep. Nailed it. Don't watch my video. That was it. That was the whole thing.
Sorry, I ruined it. Okay. So I don't know what my next video is. It might be my review of this laptop back here, which I cannot remember the name of because laptops have stupid names like
G16
numbers and stuff. So that'll be coming at some point in the near future. But thank you guys for hanging out with us and watching the Nerd Nest podcast. This is our longest episode yet. So thank you for hanging out with us for this long. You're awesome. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.